let's look at the parts inventory system. As the name implies, it's an inventory of parts, and if you're going to use an inventory of parts, obviously you have to add the items to the inventory. But before we do that, there are two prerequisites that we need to pay attention to. The first is that the financial system must be turned on. So let's verify that. First, we go to Preferences, Financial Settings. Yes, you can simply turn off the financial system if you think you don't need it, but in order for the inventory to work properly, the system must be turned on. So the very first field on the form says Turn Financial System, and then you get a drop down box and it has on or off. It must be set to on. Then you scroll down to the bottom and you click the submit button to turn it on. Ours is set to on, so we'll just leave it like that. The second prerequisite is that you must enter your vendors. So let's go to Manage Vendors, and if you have no items listed under vendors, then you will be put directly into the Add Vendors option. Since I already added some vendors, I'll have to click the Add button to bring up the Add Vendors screen. The first line requires you to enter the business name and the street address. Second line is the city, the state, and the zip code. The third line is where you enter the payment terms. These are the terms that the vendor offers you. For example, vendor might say 10 net 30, which means that you have a total amount of 30 days in which to pay the bill before it goes late. The first 10 days you receive a discount if you pay within that period. The system uses that information to calculate when the optimal time is to actually pay the bill and still get the biggest discount for paying that bill. So it is important that you have this information in there. So go ahead and add all your vendors and submit them, and you'll take advantage of that as well. Now let's go back to the admin menu and we'll take a look at the parts inventory system. So to do that, we click the inventory option on the admin menu, and there's a list of options here. We're going to be using the first two options to add parts, either startup parts inventory or manage parts. They both work and look and work in an identical fashion, except the startup parts inventory option is for when you have existing parts that you've already accounted for somewhere else. For example, if you run QuickBooks or some other software and you've already accounted for those parts, you just want to document them and add them to the system, then you use the startup parts inventory. That way you don't deduct the cost of those parts from your accounts payable funds a second time. We're going to take a look at the manage parts option. This is where if you buy new parts that need to be accounted for, this is the option you would use. So we click it. Again, because I already have parts added, I get a list of those parts. If I didn't have any parts in my inventory, it would automatically put me into the add parts screen. So to add a part here, I click the add button and it brings up the add part screen. Now this is pretty straightforward. You add the part number in the part number field, the part name, the manufacturer, you select the vendor. This is where your vendors come in. When you click the vendors button, it gives you a list of your vendors and you can select the appropriate vendor. It'll fill the vendor ID and name in. The next field down, you put the quantity. Let's say, for example, 4. I buy 4 of these particular parts. You put in the service date, and then I enter the total cost. The total cost field must not include the shipping, because that goes in as a separate expense. But the total cost is the total cost for the number of parts, the full number of parts. So here, since I have 4 parts, let's say that I paid $50 for each part. Since I have 4 of them, I would enter 200 in the total cost field, because 4 times 50 is 200. Next, I'm going to tell the system how much I want to charge for those parts. And I have 2 ways to do that. I can enter a percent markup, so that if I want to charge, for example, 12% markup on my parts, I just simply I put 12 in that box, and that indicates to the system that I'm entering a markup of 12%. I could also enter the sale price. Now, just as you add under the total cost box, you had to put in the total cost of the full quantity that you bought, the same thing goes for the sale price. The sale price that you're entering is for all 4 parts that you put in there. So if I paid $50 for each one, and I want to sell them for $60, I would put $240 in this field, because the $60 times 4 is $240. So you put the total sale price. Next, I would enter the reorder level. This is the level that once the number of parts that I buy reaches that number, it's going to send me a reminder to order more. How much more? Well, that number goes in here. So if I want to order 5 more once I reach a reorder level of 2, I put the number 5 in the reorder quantity box. Next, I put the physical location of the part, cabinet 2 for example, shelf 1, and maybe bin number 3. And down at the bottom, I put in additional information. That could be technical specifications for the part, or it could be directions on how to use the part or how to install the part. I click my submit button and my part will be added. I'm just going to click the cancel button because I already have parts in my system, and they are my parts. So that's all it takes to add a part to the inventory system. I want to go back to the admin menu and look at some other options. The next option below the add ones is the transfer parts. That is used, for example, when you want to account for parts on a truck separately from the parts that are in your stock room. You can transfer parts from your inventory that's in your stock room to a truck. So you get a list of the parts, and then you simply select the part that you want to transfer, and it comes up with the transfer parts screen, and it has the part number filled in. Notice you can't change it because you've already selected it, and it has some identifying information such as the in-service date and the number of units that you currently have on hand, and the current location. Now down below that, it asks you for the number that you want to transfer. Say I want to transfer 1 part, and the destination, I want it to be on a truck, and you notice the display just changed, and I give it the truck number. I want to go to truck number 4, and I simply submit it. Once I submit it, that part will now show up as being on truck number 4. So that option is used to transfer parts from your stock room onto a particular truck. The other option, correct part count, is used when you take a physical inventory count and you notice that your physical inventory count is different from the count that's in the system. then you have to adjust the number that's in the system so that it matches your physical inventory count. Again, it comes up with a list of the parts. You simply select the part, and down at the bottom, after it gives you the identifying information for the part, you simply enter the correct quantity, and it will go out there and adjust the quantity of the parts that you have on hand. And that is all there is to the inventory system. It's a simple, straightforward, very accurate system. And once you set up these parts to be either in your stock room or on a particular truck, your techs out in the field can use those parts in their daily route.